Montana, 1885. There are moments that divide a life into before and after. Not the dramatic ones, not the storms or the fires or the things that arrive with noise and announcement. The quiet ones. The ones that happen in the last light of a summer evening in a ranch yard, with the mountains going gold behind them and the whole world watching, and neither of them able to say the thing that needed saying. Jesse Callum had worked the Hargrove Ranch for 18 months. He had come in the spring of 1884 with a good recommendation and the straightforward intention of doing honest work and saving his wages. He knew every fence line and pasture rotation and horse by name. He had given the Hargrove Ranch everything a good hand gives, completely, without complaint, without asking for anything beyond fair wages. What he had not planned to give it was his heart. That had happened on a Tuesday morning in April of 1884, when George Hargrove brought his daughter out to the stable to check on a mare that was off her feed. And Jesse had looked up from the stall he was cleaning, and Clara Hargrove had looked at him with gray eyes that saw things clearly, and said, "Good morning," in the voice of someone who meant it. He had said good morning back. He had thought about it for the rest of the day. For 18 months, he had thought about it.
Now it was September of 1885. The summer was ending. The mountains were going gold in the evening light, and Jesse Callum was standing in the ranch yard with his hat in his hands, and Clara Hargrove was standing 3 feet away from him in a cream-lace dress, and behind her at a distance that was not distant enough stood her parents, and the man they had chosen. Richard Alderton, 28 years old, dark suit, a family with more land than God and more influence than the county sheriff. The man Clara Hargrove was going to marry. Jesse looked at her. She looked at him. And neither of them said what they needed to say because neither of them had the right to say it, and the evening held them in the particular cruelty of a moment that is ending before it ever properly began.
He had not intended to fall in love with his employer's daughter. This was not something Jesse Callum had planned or wanted. He had come to the Hargrove Ranch in the spring of 1884 at 23 years old with a recommendation from his previous employer and the entirely practical intention of working hard and saving money. It was a good ranch, well managed, the land in good condition because George Hargrove had been tending it for 30 years and understood what he had. Clara had been away at her aunt's in Helena when he arrived. She came home in April. He was in the stable when she arrived, heard voices, went on working. Then George Hargrove brought her to check on the mare, and Jesse had looked up, and Clara had looked at him, and her father had said, "Jesse Callum, my daughter Clara." And Clara had said, "Good morning, Mr. Callum." And Jesse had said, "Good morning, Miss Hargrove." In terms of words, that was all of it. In terms of everything else, it was considerably more. In the weeks that followed, Jesse watched her the way a man watches a rope unraveling in his hands, knowing the size of the mistake and not being able to let go. She rode every morning, not the decorative riding of a woman performing an activity, but the real riding of someone who had grown up on a Montana ranch and knew horses the way he knew fence lines. She was direct and competent, and she laughed at things that were actually funny, and she did not pretend not to know things she knew. He was 23 years old, and she was 20, and she was his employer's daughter, and he understood, with the clarity of a man running out of good options, that he was in trouble. He told himself the sensible things. He told himself the distance between their situations was not a distance that shortened with wishing. He told himself that George Hargrove was a fair employer who trusted him, and that trust was not something to complicate. He told himself all of this clearly and repeatedly. And then Clara brought him a book in July, simply appeared at the bunkhouse door one evening and held it out and said, "I thought you might like this." And he read it in 4 days and returned it with a note tucked inside about the ending. And she found him the next morning, and they talked about the book for an hour in the shadow of the barn. And he understood that the sensible things had stopped working. It happened slowly and then all at once. In May, she started bringing water to the hands in the afternoon, All of them, a natural thing. But she stayed longest at the section where Jesse was working, and the water became conversation, and the conversation became the part of the afternoon he looked forward to before noon. In June, he fixed the fence on the east side of her mother's garden without being asked. It had been leaning for a month and nobody had gotten to it. She found him doing it and watched for a while, and then picked up the other end of the wire without asking permission and helped him string it. They worked in the comfortable silence of two people who have discovered they don't need to fill the space between them. In August, he realized the feeling was not unreturned. He realized it on a Tuesday when she was returning from her morning ride and pulled up near the fence where he was working and looked at him with the gray eyes that saw things clearly and did not look away. He understood what that meant. It was both the best and the worst thing he had learned all summer. "Miss Hargrove?" he said. She looked at him. "I'm aware of the situation," he said. "What it is and what it isn't. And I'm not going to do anything that puts you in a difficult position with your family." She was quiet for a moment. "I know," she said. "I know you won't." She looked at the mountains. "That's one of the reasons." She rode on before he could answer. Jesse stood at the fence for a long time. He thought about what she had said. He thought about loving someone in a situation that has no good outcome. He thought about the book and the hour in the shadow of the barn and the east fence of her mother's garden. He thought about a man who does the right thing because it is right, not because it is easy. Then he went back to work. The fence needed finishing. Richard Alderton came to supper in September. Jesse had known about him all summer. The whole ranch had known. The Alderton family owned the largest spread in 2 counties. Richard was educated and 28. The match had been understood between the two families since Clara was a child. Not formally arranged, simply assumed, the way certain things in certain circles are assumed. Knowing about Richard Alderton and watching him step down from a carriage in a dark suit with his family's ease and confidence were different things. Jesse watched from the fence line. He watched George Hargrove come out with the warmth he reserved for people who mattered to him in the way of his world. He watched Clara come out in a dress he hadn't seen before and stand beside her parents. She did not look toward the fence line. He was glad she didn't. He went back to work. That evening at supper, an older hand said, "Alderton's here about the Hargrove girl. Wedding by spring, people are saying." He said it with the neutral tone of someone reporting weather. Jesse ate his supper. He said nothing. He lay in the dark that night and thought about what a man of character does when the situation has no good outcome. He thought about it for 2 days. He could stay, keep working, keep his distance, be here when it happened. But being present was a complication in a life that was going to be what it was going to be, and complicating it served nothing except his own unwillingness to go. He could not stay. Not for his sake, for hers. He went to find her on a Thursday evening. She was in the garden, the one whose fence he had fixed in June. She was cutting the last roses of the season, slowly, with the focused attention of someone doing a thing they know is the last time. She looked up when she heard him. She had known he was coming. He could see it in her face. She had been waiting for this the way you wait for something you have dreaded and have finally decided to stop dreading. "You've heard," she said. "Yes," he said. He stood at the garden gate with his hat in his hands. The Montana evening went gold around them. "I'm going to leave," he said, after the announcement. "It's the right thing." She looked at the roses. "I know," she said. "I want the best for you," he said. "Whatever that looks like. I meant that." He looked at her directly. "One day you'll forget me, and that's all right. That's how it should be." She looked up at him. She looked at the worn clothes and the honest face, and the man who had fixed her mother's garden fence without being asked, and returned a book with a note tucked inside, and had stood at a fence line all summer being exactly who he was and nothing else. And she smiled. Not sadly, The real smile, the one that meant something. "That," she said quietly, "is the one thing I can't do."
Goodbye, Jesse.
He looked at her. She looked at him. The garden held them in the last light. Neither of them moved toward the other. Neither of them had the right to. He put his hat back on. "Goodbye, Miss Hargrove," he said. "Goodbye, Jesse," she said. He walked back through the gate. She stood in the garden until the light was gone, holding the last roses of the season. She did not go inside until she was certain her face would not tell her mother everything. Before we go on, I want to ask you something different today. Most of you listening right now are somewhere in the middle of something. Maybe you're driving, maybe you're cooking or folding laundry, or sitting on a porch watching the evening come in. That's what Forever on the Frontier is for. If this story is keeping you company today, leave a like. It means more than you know. And tell me in the comments, what are you doing right now while you listen? I genuinely want to know. Now let's get back, because Jesse Callum is riding south with $42. He doesn't know yet what the winter is going to ask of him. He left on a Friday morning before the ranch was awake. He gave George Hargrove his notice the previous evening, professional, without explanation beyond needing to move on. Hargrove shook his hand and said he was sorry to lose him. Jesse thanked him and went to pack. 1 bedroll, 2 changes of clothes, his tools, his horse, $42. He rode south. He found work 3 days later at a spread owned by an old man named Elias Croft, 70 years old, no family, 400 acres in the Southern Valley that he had been working alone since his last hand quit in the summer. Croft was direct and paid fairly, and expected the same work Jesse had always given. Jesse gave it. What Jesse did not know when he arrived was that Elias Croft was dying. Consumption. The old man told him in November at the kitchen table with the matter-of-fact accuracy of someone who has had time to process the information. 6 months, the doctor said, maybe less. "I've been watching you work," Croft said, "since you got here. You work this land like a man who intends to keep it." Jesse said nothing. "I have no children," Croft said. "No family that merits the word. I'd like to know this land goes to someone who'll work it right." Jesse looked at the old man, then at the document on the table. He was 24 years old, and he had $42 and a horse. He thought about it. He thought about it all night. The answer had not changed by morning, but he told Croft, "I'll earn it, or I won't take it. You have 6 months, and I have 2 hands. Show me what this land needs, and let me show you what I am." Croft looked at him for a long time. "All right," he said. "We'll see what you're made of." What came next was the hardest 6 months of Jesse Callum's life. The winter of 1886 arrived in Montana like a judgment. People who lived through it called it the Big Die-Up afterward, with the specific understatement of those who had survived something that killed everything around them. The temperature dropped to 40 below and stayed. The snow came horizontally and did not stop. Cattle froze where they stood on ranches across the territory. Men who had built empires over 30 years watched them die in 3 weeks. Jesse saw it coming. He had ridden enough Montana winters to read the sky in November, and what the sky was saying in November of 1886 was not good. He spent 2 weeks before the worst of it preparing, moving the cattle to the sheltered draw on the south end of the property, building windbreaks from lumber he found in the barn, cutting and stacking feed until his hands bled. When the blizzard hit in late November, the Croft herd had 80 head in the most protected position on the property. It was not enough. On the 3rd night of the storm, the cattle broke from the draw, panicked by the wind and the cold and the specific terror of animals that understand they are dying. They went north toward the canyon, which was death. The canyon floor flooded in spring and froze in winter, and cattle that went into the canyon in a blizzard did not come out. Jesse saddled his horse in the dark and the 40 below cold and rode after them. What followed was 30 hours he never fully described to anyone. He remembered the cold as a physical presence, not weather, but something alive, pressing against every part of him, looking for the places where he was not covered. He remembered losing feeling in 3 fingers on his right hand somewhere around hour 12 and continuing anyway, because the cattle were still moving, and stopping was not something he was willing to do. He remembered the horse going down once on the ice of the draw, and both of them getting up, which was not guaranteed. He came back to the ranch house in the gray light of the second morning, leading the last of the stray cattle. 3 fingers black with frostbite, the horse staggering. 78 of the 80 head accounted for. Elias Croft was on the porch. He had been there since dawn, watching for Jesse to come back or not come back. He did not say thank you. He went inside. He came back out with the deed to the land, crossed out his own name, and wrote Jesse Callums above it in his careful old hand. He held it out. "You earned it," he said. Jesse took it with the hand that still worked. Neither of them said anything else. The Montana winter was still happening around them. There was still work to do. The months after Jesse left were not what Clara had expected. She had expected to feel the loss sharply, and then less sharply, and then to move forward into the life that was arranged for her. She had expected the wedding preparations and spring to arrive in order. The preparations began in October. The dress fittings, the church arrangements, the guest lists, the machinery of a wedding between 2 prominent families that had been anticipated for years. Clara participated with the composed efficiency of someone doing what is required. Richard was not unkind. This was the hardest thing, because unkindness would have been simpler. He was pleasant and educated, and genuinely interested in her in the way of a man who has been told his whole life he is getting what he deserves. He was not wrong enough to make the wrongness undeniable. Then the big die-up arrived. The Hargrove Ranch was not the Alderton operation. George Hargrove was careful, and his cattle were positioned better than most. But the winter still took 30 head in the first week, and the hands were stretched thin. And in January, George Hargrove rode out to check the north fence in the blizzard, and his horse lost its footing on the ice and threw him. Broken arm, head injury. The doctor stayed 2 days. Clara took over. Not because anyone asked, because it needed doing, and she was there, and she was her father's daughter, which meant she did not wait to be asked when something needed to be done. She managed the remaining cattle through the worst winter in Montana's recorded history. She managed the accounts in the hands and her mother's fear, and the correspondence with the Alderton family, informing them the wedding would need to be postponed. Richard replied graciously. "Summer," he suggested. She looked at his letter for a long time. She put it in the drawer. She went back to the cattle. And in the months that followed, in the managing and the nursing and the slow return of her father's strength, she understood something she had been avoiding. She had been going to marry Richard Alderton because she had not believed she had a choice. The big die-up had clarified many things. That was one of them. Elias Croft died in April of 1887. He died as he had lived, quietly, in the bed he had slept in for 40 years. Jesse was with him at the end, because Jesse had been with him through the winter, managing the land by day and sitting with the old man in the evenings, listening to 40 years of stories about what this valley had taken to build. The will was filed in Billings. 400 acres, 80 head, 78 surviving the big die-up, 2 replacements purchased in spring. The equipment, the water rights, the everything. All of it to Jesse Callum. Jesse stood in the county office and looked at the document. He was 25 years old. He had 3 fingers on his right hand that would never fully recover from the frostbite. He had land and cattle and water rights. He had spent 1.5 years becoming someone he had not been when he rode south from Clearwater County. He spent the spring working the land. He spent the summer working it harder. In autumn, he sat on the porch of his house and looked at his land and thought about a garden in September, and a smile, and a woman who had said, "That's the one thing I can't do." He had not stopped thinking about it. He thought about what a man does with something he put down and never actually put down. He wrote a letter. Not to Clara. He had no right to write to Clara. He wrote to Martha at the general store in Clearwater, who knew everything about everyone in the county. Martha wrote back in 2 weeks. 4 sentences. He read them 4 times. The 3rd sentence was enough. He saddled his horse. He rode into Clearwater on a Thursday morning in October of 1887. He had been gone 25 months. The town looked the same. He tied his horse outside the general store and went in, and Martha Greer looked up and looked at him for a long moment with the expression of a woman who has been expecting something and has not been sure when it would arrive. "Jesse Callum," she said. "Mrs. Greer," he said. She looked at him, at what 25 months had done, not to his face exactly, but to the way he stood. A man who owns land stands differently than a man who works it for someone else. Martha had been reading people for 40 years. The wedding was postponed in January, she said. George Hargrove had an accident. Clara managed the ranch through the big die-up. "I know," he said. "Your letter." "What I didn't put in the letter," Martha said, "is that the postponement has been extended twice, and that Richard Alderton came in August and left after 2 days, and that Clara has not written to him since." Jesse looked at the counter. "And Clara?" he said. Martha looked at him with the specific expression of a woman deciding how much information to share. "Clara Hargrove," Martha said, "managed this ranch through the worst winter in the history of Montana, alone, while her father healed and her mother worried. She is not the same young woman who cut roses in September of 1885. She paused. "She rides the east fence line on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, has done since spring." Jesse looked at Martha. "Today is Thursday," she said. He put his hat on. "Thank you, Mrs. Greer," he said. "Jesse," she said as he reached the door. He stopped. "Don't say anything complicated," she said. "The simple thing will be enough." He nodded. He went to his horse. He rode toward the east fence line. She was there. He saw her from a distance, the gray horse, the familiar way she sat in the saddle. She had not seen him yet. He pulled his horse to a walk. She saw him when he was 50 yards away. She stopped. He stopped. They looked at each other across the distance of the east fence line of the ranch, where the summer of 1884 had happened, and the book with the note tucked inside, and the hour in the shadow of the barn, and the last roses of September. He rode forward slowly. When he was close enough to see her face clearly, he stopped. 25 months. She was the same and different. The big die-up and her parents' accident, and the postponements, and the 2 days of Richard Alderton in August had done something to her face. Not aged it, clarified it. The way difficulty burns away what is decorative and leaves what is real. He was different too. The land ownership showed. The 30 hours on horseback and 40 below cold showed. 3 fingers on his right hand that held the reins slightly differently than they had before showed. She could see it all, and she read it the way she had always read things, clearly, without pretense. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Then she said, "You came back." Not a question, not an accusation. The fact of it, stated plainly. "Yes," he said. He reached into his coat and took out the county deed, Elias Croft's signature at the bottom, his name where it needed to be. He held it out across the fence. She took it. She read it. She looked up. 400 acres, she said. "And 78 head," he said. 2 fingers shy of a full hand. He held up his right hand briefly, the 3 that didn't close all the way. She looked at his hand, then at his face. "Jesse," she said, "I don't care about the 400 acres." "I know," he said, "but I needed you to know they exist. Because the last time I left, I said I wanted the best for you, and I meant it. And I needed to come back as someone who earned his way to this conversation." She held his gaze across the fence rail. "You were worth this conversation before," she said. "You just didn't believe it." He was quiet for a moment. "Do you still believe what you said?" he said. "In the garden?" She looked at him with the gray eyes that had been seeing him clearly since a Tuesday morning in April of 1884. She did not smile this time. She just looked at him steadily and said, "That's the one thing I can't do." He got off his horse. He came through the fence. He stood in front of her. She looked at this man, the honest face and the hand that didn't close all the way, and the land he had earned in a blizzard, and the same person he had always been underneath all of it. She took his hand, both of them, the one that worked and the one that didn't. He looked at her holding his damaged hand, and something in him that had been held very tightly for 25 months let go. The Montana morning held them both at the east fence line, and the thing that had been impossible was not impossible anymore. George Hargrove received Jesse Callum in his study on a Friday afternoon. He had recovered most of his strength, the arm healed, the head injury leaving occasional headaches. He was not the man he had been before January, but he was close to it. And what the months had added was something closer to perspective. Jesse sat across from him and said what he had come to say. He did not perform it. He stated the facts, who he was, where he had been, what the big die-up had cost him, and what it had given him, what Elias Croft had left him and why, what he was asking. He said it plainly, looking at George Hargrove directly, the way he had always done everything. Hargrove listened. When Jesse finished, he was quiet for a long time. "You left my ranch in September of 1885, he said. "Yes, sir," Jesse said. "Without explanation." "I had reasons I couldn't give you at the time," Jesse said. "I can give them now if you want them." Hargrove looked at him. "I think I know what the reasons were," he said. He looked at his hands. "My daughter ran this ranch for 4 months while I was unable to. She managed the hands and the accounts and the cattle through the worst winter this territory has seen. She did it without being asked and without complaint." He looked at the window. "She's her own person. I forgot that somewhere." He stood and extended his hand. "She's in the garden," he said. "Go ask her what she thinks." Jesse shook his hand. He went to the garden, the same garden, the east fence still standing correctly from June of 1884. Clara was there with her mother, who had known something was happening since Thursday morning. When Jesse came through the gate, Margaret Hargrove said, "I'll go check on your father," and went inside with the transparent discretion of a woman who considers herself subtle. Jesse stood in the garden. Clara looked at him. "My father?" she said. "Yes," he said. "What did he say?" "He said to ask you what you think," Jesse said. She looked at the gate where her mother had been, then at him. "I think," Clara said, "that I have been thinking the same thing for 25 months. He crossed the garden. He stood in front of her. He took her hand, carefully, the right one that didn't close all the way, her hand over his. She felt the difference in the fingers. She did not let go. "I'm not the same man who left," he said. "No," she said, "but you're the same person." He looked at her. "Yes," he said. "That's exactly right." They were married in the Clearwater Church in December of 1887. Not elaborate. Neither of them wanted elaborate. The church in winter, the town present, the mountains through the windows going white with the first real snow. Clara wore cream. Not the Alderton dress, something simpler, which was what the occasion was. George Hargrove walked his daughter to the altar. Margaret Hargrove sat in the front row with the expression of a woman who has revised a position and finds the revision correct. Jesse stood at the altar in the best clothes he owned, better than what he had owned 25 months ago, because a man with 400 acres could afford better clothes, but not so different that he was unrecognizable as the man who had fixed a garden fence in June of 1884 and returned a book with a note tucked inside. Clara came down the aisle and looked at him the way she had been looking at him since a Tuesday morning in April of 1884. He looked back the same way. They settled on the Croft land, 400 acres that Elias Croft had built over a lifetime and left to a young man who had ridden 30 hours through a blizzard to earn it. Clara brought her knowledge of the land and the accounting competence that had kept her parents' ranch running through 4 months of crisis, and the specific capability of a woman who had spent 23 years being prepared for a life that turned out not to be the one she was preparing for. She was prepared for this one instead. George Hargrove came for Sunday supper starting in January. In spring, he rode the fence lines with Jesse and pointed out things about the Southern Valley terrain that Jesse had not yet learned, and Jesse listened the way he had always listened to useful information. The two men did not become easy with each other immediately. They became honest first, which was the foundation the other thing was built on. By summer, it was solid. On an evening in April, the April that was supposed to have been the Alderton wedding, Clara stood on the porch of her house and looked at the 400 acres in the last light and thought about a garden in September of 1885 and a smile and the things she had said. She had been right. She still was. She heard Jesse's boots on the porch behind her. He came and stood beside her and looked at what they had built and what they were going to keep building. He put his arm around her, the right arm, the hand that didn't close all the way, resting on her shoulder. She put her hand over his. Neither of them said anything. Neither of them needed to. The Montana evening held them both, and everything was exactly as it should be. Jesse Callum stood in a garden in September of 1885 and said, "One day you'll forget me." He said it because he was a man who told the truth. And the truth, as he understood it then, was that time and distance do what they do. They diminish things, smooth the edges of what was, make room for what has to be. Clara smiled at him, and she said, "That's the one thing I can't do." She was right for 25 months. Through the wedding preparations and the worst winter in Montana's recorded history, and the nights managing a ranch while her father healed, and the letters she stopped writing to a man who was never the right man, she was right every day. And Jesse, who rode away because it was the right thing and spent 25 months becoming someone he could come back as, not a different person, the same person who had ridden 30 hours through 40 below cold because 78 cattle needed someone willing to go after them, who had taken a dying old man's land by earning it with frostbitten fingers, who had come back to a garden gate as a man who had proved what he was made of, not to impress anyone, but because that was simply who he was. He came back the same person she could not forget. She had always known that. Some things cannot be forgotten because they are not meant to be. They are meant to be waited for and earned. May God bless each and every one of you who listened today. Until next time, keep riding.
Look at it. We did this. It's everything we dreamed of.